Hello. Welcome on back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. I've missed you all so much during this holiday break, and I hope you're enjoying the new year so far. With us today, I have my good friend La Perrier on back with us, and on her, I'm creating this makeup look inspired by the legendary, the iconic AALIYAH. So without further ado, if you want to learn how I created this look right here, then keep on watching. So to begin, I'm using the Charlotte Tilbury Magic Serum Crystal Elixir to prep and hydrate our model's skin. Now we're doing a pretty full glam on La Perrier today, which involves quite a bit of powder, so prepping her skin well is going to be really crucial. And what's nice about using a serum like the one I'm using here is that it's a thinner consistency than that of, let's say, a moisturizer or cream. So the skin is really going to soak it up a little quicker and absorb all the ingredients of it, such as the vitamin C and the niacinamide and everything that's hydrating the skin, giving it that plumped and refreshed look, which also makes the complexion products we use on top look that much more flawless. For foundation, I'm using the Shiseido Synchro Skin Radiant Lifting Foundation, and I'm starting out with the shade 510 Suede, which I'm focusing more so on the center of the face, where she's naturally a little lighter than the perimeter of her face. As you can see, as she turns to the side here, this foundation appears to be way too light, which it is, but once I add the deeper shade in, everything will match up and create the most beautiful contrast. So the second shade I'm using is the shade here, which is called 540 Mahogany. And you'll notice I'm mixing the two shades together on the back of my hand to create the perfect tone before applying it on with the brush. This is why I always recommend to people to get two shades of foundation. One that's, a little too light and one that's a little too dark, because you can always use them independently to contour and highlight. And you can also mix them together to create your perfect skin tone at the time you're applying it. For instance, you may be a little more fair during the winter, or you may be a bit more tan during the summer. But what's most important here is that they share the same undertone, whether it be red or yellow or neutral. That's something you're going to want them to have in common. Today, you'll notice that I'm really going to emphasize the beautiful warm golden tones in La Perrier's skin. So the foundation, the concealer, the powder, everything is going to work together so that it matches up perfectly by the end of this tutorial. I mean, we can see here now the complexion is already coming together. It doesn't look as crazy as it did when I had just applied that first shade. I know you were a little nervous for a second there. Not gonna lie, I was too, but it always works out. So now that we have the foundation applied, I'm using these two concealers here to highlight and conceal the under eye. I'll list them both down below, but one of them is from One Size. It's their Butter Silk Concealer in the shade Dark 2R, and the other is the Kevyn Sensual Skin Enhancer in the shade SX12. The Kevyn one is beautiful as is, but I'm using the warmth from the One Size concealer to give it a little more of an orange undertone. I'm creating a pretty bright under eye highlight today, so I need to make sure the warmth is there. Otherwise, once I blend it out and set it with powder, it can tend to look a little like a little gray, you know what I mean? And for the eyelids, you'll see me here use the Kevyn concealer alone as is to get a really bright lid, which will make the shadows stand out later when we apply them. But anyways, I'm going to finish applying and blending out the concealer where we apply it, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, so now that I've highlighted the under eyes and the bridge of the nose, I'm using this Rare Beauty Liquid Pinch Blush in the shade Grateful to add a hint of color to her cheeks. I first apply it to the back of my hand, saturate the bristles of the brush with the pigment, and then apply it right on. Now, even though I'll be adding a powder blush later, this really makes for a perfect base for the blush. I think layering cream and liquid blushes help keep the color last throughout the day and prevents it from losing its vibrancy in flash photography. Now that we're done applying the liquid and cream products, I'm using the Anastasia Beverly Hills setting powder in the shade Deep Peach to set the concealer around the eyes. This again has that beautiful warm undertone to it that I was referring to earlier. And I'm not using a ton of this powder right now either, just enough to set that concealer into place, and then I'll later come back with more powder to bake. And for the rest of the face, I'm using a different powder, which I'll show you in just a moment. Okay, so the other powder I'm using is the Huda Beauty setting powder in the shade Coffee Cake, and I'm lightly applying this onto the perimeter of her face with a fluffy face brush. I don't want to pack on this powder, otherwise I would just use the powder puff, but the brush just gives a softer application. And I'm using this powder instead of the other one because it's deeper in tone, so everything kind of coincides in terms of shades, if that makes sense. We used a deeper shade foundation around the perimeter of the face, so we use a deeper tone powder. And we used a lighter foundation and concealer in the center, so we use a lighter toned powder there. And I'm not going to be afraid to really go in with the powders today. Not only do I want this makeup to last, but I want a matte finish, which I know I usually go for a dewy, glowy finish, but it's nice to mix it up a little bit. And I did notice quite a few photos of AALIYAH with makeup that had more of a matte finish. So anyways, that's the direction we're going to take today. Here I'm packing on the Anastasia Beverly Hills powder to start the baking process. I'm applying it to the areas of the face I want to highlight. So, the under eyes, the chin, the jawline, the center of the forehead, and down the center of the nose. So I'm going to leave this powder here to bake while I do the eye makeup, and then we'll come back to wipe it all off. The first eye product I'm using today is this About Face Fluid Eye Paint in the shade Infinity, and just applying a small amount of this to the center of the lid before buffing it out. Of course, if you want this to be really opaque, you can use more than I did here, or you can use a couple of layers, but I'm just looking for something sweet and simple as a base for the powder eyeshadows we'll use afterwards. Plus, more than anything, I just want something that the eyeshadows will grip onto, therefore preventing the chance of anything looking patchy. For eyeshadows today, I'm using two different palettes. I'm mixing this blue shade from the One Size Visionary palette and this purple shade from the Norvina Volume 5 palette, and just packing that on to the upper lid before smoking it out. I'm really gonna take my time with this blending today because I was looking back at some of my tutorials from 2021, and some of the blending of my eye looks look really busted. I don't know if I was just getting lazy or what, but I promise this year I'm gonna try to be a little bit more careful about that. So slow and steady wins the race here with the blending. Next up, I'm using this shade here called B3 from the same Norvina palette and blending that onto the inner corner. More so, I pack this on with a flat eyeshadow brush and just diffuse out the edges, which just gives us a really beautiful gradient transition into those deeper shades we used. And then I'm using the shade here called C2, and I'm applying just a bit of that onto the center of the lid. So listen to this. I had no idea what look I was going for today until Le Perrier had recommended we do something inspired from the 90s. AALIYAH came to mind, so I looked back at some of her glams and found one that inspired today's look. Now, in the photo, it looked like she had this bluish purple gray hue in the eyeshadow, but in other photos, it looked like black and silver, so I don't really know what it was, but either way, I think we're making AALIYAH proud with this glam. It turns out really quite stunning. And you saw there that I brought those shadows down to the lower lash line for a smoky effect, and then I'm adding the tiniest bit of black eyeshadow to the outer third portion of the eye, just to give us a little bit more depth and dimension. Heading back to the complexion for a second, I'm using this Fenty Sunstalker bronzer in the shade Mocha Mami and just adding a bit of this to the areas of the face we want to accentuate the depth. The hollows of her cheekbones, the perimeter of her forehead, and the jawline. So basically all of the areas we're not using that baking powder. For the lashes, I'm starting out by using this Too Faced Better Than Sex mascara and running this through both the upper and bottom lashes. I'm being generous with this because notice I didn't use any eyeliner today. So I want to make sure I get the root of the lashes real dark, and then when we add lashes on top, it blends seamlessly. For lashes, I'm using this House of Lashes in the style Boudoir and popping these right on. I cut the inner third of these lashes off, so most of the lash is focused on the outer portion of the eye. You can use the whole lash if you like, but I think this gives a softer, more understated effect. Next up, I'm using this Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Definer in the shade Ebony to fill in and shape her brows. This was probably the quickest step of today's look. Besides the fact that she already has fantastic brows to begin with, this brow pencil just makes it super easy. If you like more precision, you might like the Brow Wiz better, which you can use to draw in those hair-like strokes and really get in there with the detail. But if you're looking for an overall easy and efficient product, this brow definer is the way to go. So I'm gonna complete the other brow off camera and then start wiping off that powder that we've let sit on the skin. You can see it wipes right off, doesn't leave anything too crazy looking behind. And because we did this, those highlights are really set into place and won't wear down throughout the day. In fact, I'll even say it looks better and better throughout the day. After we did the hair and filmed the outro shots, I was walking La Perrier out to her car, and when she stepped into the sunlight, you guys, I was like, dang, the complexion looks flawless. Not to say that it doesn't on camera, because let's be honest, the studio lights can make anything look good. It kind of does half of the work for me, but in that natural light, it looked so good. Okay, next I'm using this Cheek Kiss blush from Milani in the shade 220 and dusting this onto the apples of her cheeks. As I mentioned earlier, this is going to reinforce that liquid blush we had used and bring that vibrancy back to life. And more than anything, it helps make that transition between the highlight and the contour that much more seamless. For lips, I'm starting out by using the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Matte and Satin Lipstick in the shade Butterscotch and applying this right onto the center of her lips. I'll talk more about this in a second, but in the meantime, I'm swiping it right on and then using the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Lip Liner in the shade Malt to trace around that lipstick. So these are both brand new products that literally got delivered right when we were filming this, so of course I had to use it. I love that the lipstick is a satin finish. It has a tiny bit of a shine to it. I don't know about you, but it's hard for me to work with matte lipsticks sometimes, unless it's a liquid lipstick. They just don't glide on as easy for me, and by applying this satin lipstick beforehand, it allows for the pencil to apply a little easier, and we can use it to shade around the lips for that slight ombre effect. And for a little extra shine, I'm mixing in some clear gloss with that lipstick and applying it right on top. The last product I'm using today is the Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray to set and lock this makeup into place, which makes this the final step and how I created this AALIYAH inspired makeup look on a naturally beautiful model. There we have it, kids. I hope y'all enjoyed today's tutorial. If you did, be sure to give this video a big ol' thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also check out more of my work on my Instagram at Painted by Spencer. And until next time, I'll see you soon.